In the state of Ohio, there was an old apartment building called Riverside Heights. From the outside, it looked completely normal. People lived there. Kids played in the parking lot. At night, television lights flickered through the windows like any ordinary apartment complex. But the building had one rule, a rule every tenant knew. Never open the door to room 914. Nobody explained why, because during the last 11 years, everyone who entered that room came back, but not as the same person. November 2025, 26-year-old Daniel Harper moved from New York City after his life completely fell apart. His wife had left him. He was drowning in debt, and because of severe insomnia, he barely slept anymore. Riverside Heights was the only place cheap enough for him to afford. His apartment number was room 907, directly across the hallway from room 914. The building manager was an elderly woman named Mrs. Green. The first night Daniel arrived with his boxes, she stared at him strangely before handing him the key. Then she quietly said, "If you hear laughing at night, don't open your door." Daniel laughed awkwardly. "Ma'am, I don't believe in ghost stories." But Mrs. Green didn't smile. She leaned closer and whispered, "And after 3 a.m., don't step into the hallway." The first night, Daniel couldn't sleep. The clock beside his bed read 2:47 a.m. The entire apartment building was silent. Then suddenly, he heard laughter outside. Soft at first, weak, almost childish. Hee-hee? Hey. Haha. Daniel sat up in bed. The laughter sounded wrong, like someone pretending to understand what human laughter sounded like. Then more voices joined in, dozens of them. Men, women, children, all laughing together in the hallway. Daniel groaned in frustration and walked to the door. Probably drunk neighbors. But the moment he reached the peephole, the laughter stopped. Complete silence. Daniel looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. No people. No movement. Nothing. Then slowly, the peephole began fogging up from the other side, like someone was breathing directly onto it. Daniel froze. And suddenly, an eye appeared. One pale white eye. No pupil. Just staring directly at him. Then a woman's voice whispered through the door, "Daniel, have you forgotten how to smile?" Daniel stumbled backward in shock, because he had never told anyone in the building his name. The next morning, Daniel convinced himself it was exhaustion, sleep deprivation, nothing more. But when he opened his apartment door the next morning, words were scratched into the hallway wall, written in dark red. "Don't look at their teeth." Underneath the message were deep claw marks carved into the paint, like someone had tried to tear through the wall itself. That was when his neighbor stepped out of apartment 908, Mark Ellis, tall, extremely thin, skin pale like paper, and smiling. Not a normal smile. His mouth stretched too wide across his face, wide enough that the corners of his lips looked ripped. Mark stared at Daniel without blinking. Then he quietly asked, "You heard the laughing last night?" Daniel hesitated. "Yeah." Mark's smile widened even further. "Good. That means they noticed you." The third night, Daniel woke suddenly at exactly 3:03 a.m. Something was standing in his bedroom, a tall figure beside the closet. its face hidden in darkness, but its smile was visible. Bright white teeth. Too many teeth. Far more than any human mouth should hold. Daniel screamed and fell out of bed. The bedroom lamp flicked on. The figure was gone. The room was empty. Breathing heavily, Daniel turned toward the mirror. Words were written across the glass in wet fingerprints. Smile back. His stomach twisted. Then he noticed pain in his mouth. Sharp pain. He rushed into the bathroom and looked in the mirror, and froze. The corners of his lips were stretching upward on their own, slowly, forcefully, as if invisible hands were pulling his face into a smile. Blood began running from the corners of his mouth, but his lips kept stretching wider, and wider, and wider. Then the laughter returned, not outside the apartment, inside the walls, inside the ceiling, inside the floor. Hundreds of voices laughing together. Ha 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 ha. Daniel screamed in terror. But at that exact moment, his apartment door slowly creaked open by itself. The hallway was full of people. Dozens of tenants standing motionless outside. Every single one smiling. The same impossible smile. None of them blinking. All staring directly at him. And behind them, room 914 was open. The room beyond was completely black, but inside that darkness, something enormous was moving, breathing, waiting. Then all the smiling tenants spoke together in one broken voice. Now it's your turn to smile. Daniel slammed the apartment door shut and locked it, then locked it again and again. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely breathe. Outside the hallway, the tenants continued laughing softly. Not loud, not aggressive, almost patient, like they already knew he belonged to them. Daniel backed away from the door and grabbed a kitchen knife. The muscles in his cheeks burned. His smile was still stretching wider by itself. Blood dripped from the corners of his mouth onto the floor. Then, a knock came from the bedroom. 3 slow taps. T-A-P, T-A-P, T-A-P. Daniel turned pale. His bedroom door was slightly open. Darkness filled the room beyond it. And inside that darkness, something was breathing. Wet, heavy, almost excited. Then a voice whispered from inside the bedroom, "Daniel, let us see your teeth." The voice sounded like his ex-wife, exactly like her, even though she lived hundreds of miles away. Daniel stumbled backward. No? Another voice came from the bedroom, this time his mother's voice. "Don't be rude, sweetheart. Smile for us." The bedroom door slowly creaked wider. Daniel saw movement inside. People standing in the dark, at least 6 of them. Tall shapes pressed against the walls, all smiling, none of them moving, just staring. Suddenly, Daniel's phone rang. He nearly screamed. The caller ID read, Mark Ellis, his smiling neighbor. Daniel answered immediately. "What is this? What's happening?" Mark sounded terrified now, completely different from before. "Listen carefully," Mark whispered. "Do not let them make you smile fully." "What are they?" There was silence on the phone. Then Mark answered, "Nobody knows, but room 914 changes people. First they hear the laughing, then they start smiling, and when the smile finally reaches the eyes," Mark's voice cracked. "They stop being human." Daniel's breathing became uneven. "Tell me how to stop it," Mark whispered. "You have to leave the building before sunrise." Then the call suddenly distorted into static, and through the static, Daniel heard laughing, not from the phone, from inside his apartment. He turned slowly. The bathroom door was open now. He was sure he had closed it. Something stood inside the bathroom. A woman, extremely tall. Her hospital gown hung loosely from her body. Her arms were too long enough for her fingers to touch the floor, and her smile. Her mouth had split open almost to her ears. Rows and rows of teeth filled her face. Human teeth, children's teeth, animal teeth, all packed together inside one impossible mouth. She tilted her head unnaturally. Bones cracked inside her neck. Then she whispered, "Pretty smile." Daniel ran. He sprinted toward the apartment door and threw it open. The hallway tenants were gone. Every apartment door stood open now. Inside each apartment, Daniel could see people standing motionless in darkness, smiling, watching him, waiting. The hallway lights flickered violently. Then Daniel noticed something horrifying. The carpet was wet, covered in blood, fresh blood, and drag marks led directly toward room 914. The door was fully open now. The darkness inside looked wrong, too deep, like the room was far bigger than the apartment itself. Then Daniel heard crying, a child crying inside room 914. "Help me," a little girl's voice. "Please, it hurts." Daniel stopped moving. The voice sounded real, desperate. Then the girl softly whispered, "They made me smile." Daniel slowly stepped closer to room 914. Every instinct told him to run, but the crying continued. And then he saw her, a little girl standing inside the darkness, maybe 8 years old, blonde hair, tiny pajamas covered in blood, her face hidden. Daniel carefully reached toward her. "It's okay. Come here." The little girl slowly looked up, and Daniel screamed. Her mouth was gone, split completely open across her entire face. A gigantic smile filled with hundreds of jagged teeth. Her jaw stretched far beyond human limits. Then she laughed, a deep adult laugh coming from a child's body. And suddenly, long hands burst from the darkness inside room 914. Dozens of hands. They grabbed Daniel's arms, his throat, his legs, pulling him into the room. Daniel screamed and clawed at the floor as the smiling tenants silently stepped into the hallway behind him, watching, smiling wider. And inside room 914, something huge moved closer in the darkness. Then Daniel heard its voice, deep, rotting, ancient. "Smile." Daniel's fingernails tore against the hallway carpet as the hands dragged him toward room 914. The smiling tenants stood around him silently, watching, their faces twitching unnaturally. None of them blinked, not once. Daniel screamed and stabbed wildly with the kitchen knife. One of the hands released him, then another. He kicked backward violently and broke free for a second. But when he looked down, the hands weren't human. Their skin was stretched too tightly over the bones, and every finger had tiny mouths on it. Tiny, smiling mouths, each one whispering, "Smile, smile." Daniel nearly vomited. He stumbled backward down the hallway. The tenants slowly began walking toward him together, not running, just calmly approaching, smiling wider with every step. Then suddenly, apartment lights throughout the building shut off at once. Darkness swallowed the hallway. Only room 914 remained visible. Inside the room, something massive shifted in the shadows. Daniel heard wet, cracking sounds, like giant bones bending. Then a face slowly emerged from the darkness. Not fully human, not fully anything. Its skin looked stitched together from different people, different ages, different races. Pieces of dozens of faces fused into one giant head, and every face was smiling, some crying, some whispering, some laughing uncontrollably. The creature's mouth slowly opened. Inside its throat were more teeth, rows descending endlessly into darkness. Then all the faces spoke together. "We were lonely." Daniel backed away trembling. "What are you?" The thing answered, "We are everyone who smiled back." Suddenly a loud gunshot exploded through the hallway. Bang! One of the smiling tenants collapsed. Daniel turned. Mark Ellis stood at the far end of the hallway holding a revolver. For the first time, Mark was no longer smiling. His mouth had been sliced open at the corners. Old scars, deep scars, like he had cut his own smile apart. "Run!" Mark screamed. Daniel sprinted toward him. The smiling tenants rushed forward instantly. Their bodies moved wrong now, jerking violently like broken puppets. Some crawled across the ceiling. Others bent backward until their bones snapped. But they kept smiling, always smiling. Mark fired again and again. Bang, bang, bang. Teeth shattered. Blood sprayed across the hallway walls. But even after being shot, the tenants kept laughing. One woman's jaw hung completely, detached from her face while she giggled endlessly. A man with crushed eye sockets crawled toward Daniel using broken fingers, still smiling, still whispering, "Join us." Mark dragged Daniel into the stairwell and slammed the metal door shut. The laughing immediately stopped outside. Complete silence. Daniel collapsed against the wall, shaking. Mark grabbed his face hard. "Look at me." Daniel's lips were still stretching upward uncontrollably. The smile was reaching his eyes now. Mark looked terrified. "You don't have much time left," Daniel whispered. "Tell me what room 914 is." Mark stared into the darkness below the stairwell, then quietly answered, "The building wasn't always here. In 1978, this place was a psychiatric hospital." Daniel felt cold all over. Mark continued. Patients started mutilating their own faces. Doctors found them smiling after death. Some tore their mouths open with their bare hands. Then one night, everyone inside the hospital disappeared. Daniel swallowed hard. Mark looked back upward toward the hallway. Years later, they built Riverside Heights over the ruins, but room 914 was never destroyed. "Because it isn't really a room." Daniel stared at him. "What does that mean?" Mark's voice dropped to a whisper. "Room 914 is alive." Then came a sound from below them, deep inside the stairwell. A child laughing. Daniel slowly looked downward. The darkness below stretched far deeper than the building should allow. And down there, People were standing on the stairs, hundreds of them, smiling upward, waiting silently in the dark. Then all at once, every smiling person opened their mouths impossibly wide and screamed together. He looked at the teeth. The stairwell lights exploded. Darkness swallowed everything. Then Daniel felt fingers touch the back of his neck. Cold fingers. Too many fingers. And a voice whispered directly into his ear, "Now open your mouth."